Okay, I think probably we should start, and unfortunately I got elected because I sat at a very low number table. My name is Valerie McKinley, and can people hear me? Anyway, as I said, my name is Valerie McKinley. I sat at table 2, and we had a great discussion, and I don't know, but when I came, I did not know what to expect, and maybe it's just because of the staff and so forth, but it was a really healthy discussion and it was very well read. The first item that we considered was what to do with the section on your sheets called waterfront. One of the things that came out was most of the people recognized the fact that we have a veterans memorial, but they wanted expanded in some way and to have better access. And perhaps for the whole village, that would be an important thing. We did not want water features, fountains and so forth, and we were negative to a splash pool. We liked our present pool. We liked the site to be very much a green space site with gazebos and so forth. We had concerns about the safety and the cost of putting up structures and so forth on the sites, and also the cost to maintain and the personnel that would needed to run some of the suggestions. There was no consensus on having a cafe. Actually, our table was divided 50-50 in terms of the count on that. And in fact, on enhanced water usage, we like the fact that there are kayaks there and so forth, but we did have concerns, and they had to do with increasing and allowing other things like floating decks and so forth. And also the fact that the more you put on that site, the more parking is needed, obviously. And there were concerns, and we decided we did not like the idea of a parking garage. So maybe that should be reflected in what is actually done. For green space, we really had a discussion and we liked it. We wanted the parking to be adequate, but again, we were very sure that we did not like the idea unless absolutely necessary of a parking garage. We talked about an arts center, a cultural center, and my table was very enthused about having that. However, we did not think it belonged on that site, particularly when there is a site that would be much better for it, which is the 10-acre site adjacent to the Hampton Inn. That type of a facility brings people from all over, and the thought of access, increasing the crawls, things like that on the village, we felt that that other site, the 10 acres by the mall, would be much better. The other thing is we discussed the Ken Adams Way very positively in terms of, yes, it obviously belongs with the village and should be used, but we did not want to see a retail development there. We were much more interested in the village creating a partnership so that actually it came up with something that has been done before, particularly on that site, an executive suite building. We think the village should not only be concerned with recreation, but also helping our business community. And we'd like our business community to be healthy, and that's one thing we thought can be added. Obviously not necessarily with village participation on a day-to-day, but the cost of it being a public-private partnership.
Good evening, table number 5's voice. My name is Karen Gallinaw. I'm a full-time resident of Wellington. I live in Lakefield South. We had a very spirited discussion on all topics at table 5. There were 10 of us at the table, and every single one expressed their opinion. So here's the consensus. Overall, we thought a lot of the options were vague and there were many unknowns. So we did the best we could with the information posed to us. So as for the waterfront, there was one big starter comment from everybody: don't tear down the Lake Wellington Professional Center. So do not tear it down. So what we did was we like the simple access to various points within the project. The waterfront covered seating, there was a lot of discussion about crime and liabilities. The dining was a no, and there was a majority yes to boating options, and 3 would even like a dock. As for green space, majority said leave it as it is. They would prefer, again, walking access to key locations within the project. There was a no to splash pad to Scott's Place. No parking structure. That was 8 no's and only 2 yeses. And the question to pay for amphitheater activities, 7 said leave it as it is, and 3 said okay to pay. As for water features, it was a unanimous, all bullets were no. So if you look at your sheets, I don't have to read it, but it's the splash pad, the relocate the public pool, replace the public pool, create recreational splash park, and create a splash pad. So all of those are unanimous no's at table 5. Ken Adams Way, unanimous no restaurants. Parking structure question had too many unknowns. We're really not for it, but we don't feel we have enough information on it. The amphitheater, like I said, the majority was leave it as it is, and very limited number for pay. And in terms of adding offices, it was a unanimous no. And it was emphasized that we do need walking access to different points in the proposed area. And adding pedestrian seating would be okay. But there was a complete unanimous against no shops. That's on Ken Adams Way. Now, as for the Performing Arts Center and Banquet Hall, they said yes, Wellington needs it, but not in this area that we're talking about tonight. And 2 said, out of the 10, said we don't need it at all. So I think we did have one pretty spirited discussion about something that wasn't on our agenda, and that was that since we're considering uses for this, the different buildings, that there is a need maybe to consolidate all of the Wellington government activities in one area. And that is keep, like, for instance, all the record keeping and the microfiche and all that's kept at the Boys and Girls Club, create a space or repurpose a space or keep it within our village buildings. So anyway, I hope I expressed, I know they're not booing me, so I'm good. And that's it, that's our report.
Hi, my name is Monica Cagnett. We live in Emerald Forest and on Lake Wellington, which we thoroughly enjoy. So at our table, we said we definitely want a boardwalk along the waterfront that everyone can enjoy. We also want to keep the pool and expand it. Keep the pool the way it is with the swimming lanes, and then add on to that with a family pool, area for kids, but have it a little bit separated, but they can enjoy it at the same time as they're having their other activities going on. So we also want a parking garage, although we were not able to come up to a location as to where to put it, over by the other offices or out towards the street. but we definitely felt a parking garage is needed because right now when they have the activities, they run out of parking spaces. So we definitely want a restaurant out by the water, either incorporated into the existing structure or a separate structure, but out by the water. And we want also boat docks where people on the water can come and come there in their boats and also have other water activities. We like shade and covered seating near the water. They said now when you're out there in the green space, it's too hot in the summer for people to enjoy it. So we like the green space, but we need either trees or other fixed areas with covered areas for shade. We don't like the idea of the adult swings. We don't think that would be utilized. We would like paddle boards and canoes and things like that to be used by the public to have access to the lake. And also, we did like the idea of a splash pad with fountains that kids can cool off and run through the fountains when they're over there at the park. And we also feel it would be a big benefit to join the two lakes by raising the area on blue trays. And we also feel we want to keep the amphitheater and have it free for events. Do not have it fenced off where people have to pay for the events. It brings people together in the community. And again, we wanted the splash feature for kids and the family pool in addition to the existing lap pool. And we all felt that there was no need for shops along Ken Adams Way. We didn't think there was enough room and that it would not be utilized. There was no consensus on the offices. Half of the people thought the offices should be moved from where they are on the lakefront and utilize the lake for the public, and the other half felt that they still wanted the offices to remain there for the use of the local community. Or also we could keep the offices at the beginning, and as the area grew, we could move the offices at a later date somewhere else on the property where we could utilize the lakefront. And everyone said yes to a performing arts center, but not at the Wellington Town Center, to have it at another location. Thank you.
All right, as you could tell, penmanship wasn't a requirement to be a table captain. My name is Stuart Hack. I've been a resident of Wellington since 2005. I have an office in the Lake Wellington Professional Center, and I am currently on the executive board of the Wellington Chamber of Commerce. So at our table, table number 6, we were pretty much in agreement on most of the issues. The one thing that we have on top is we believe a lot of these things should be decided by a voter referendum as opposed to a council vote. We talked about the waterfront, the walkways along the way. It's a good way to access it. There was some concern about the retention pond because there are alligators in the water as well as algae and amoeba. And the question is, do you want people to play in that water? And our table was not comfortable with that. There was also concern from a resident of Mayfair, which is a nearby community, 55 and over, concern with the building up, placing cars around the area. Additional construction is a concern. The table felt that a boardwalk was a good suggestion. It was also brought up again as far as the whole plan, is this something that we want or something that we need? And that's a big difference. We discussed the pool, how we're not in favor of it being on school property. The topic of the office building came down. If it got torn down, we'd want there to be a transition period so that a new building would be ready before the old building was taken away. As far as dining along there, we were a little confused as far as if the village doesn't want to be in the real estate business as far as an office building, why would they want to be a landlord for a restaurant? Then we talked about the green space. We like an idea of a connected trail from the lake to retail. This trail should have some shade and some lighting because we are in Florida and it gets hot there. It should be a comfortable space to walk. There was a question on the size of the roadway, whether it adheres to DOT standards and whether studies will be done on that. We think it's a good idea for a splash pad to be added to Scott's Place because it does get crowded there and it would be a good addition. We would like to keep the pool where it is. We're not in favor of that being moved. And let me go to my next page. Okay. We feel that in general, the table felt that, you know, Wellington, as it's growing, may be starting to lose the community feel. We feel that this plan, as far as activities and amenities, are great for little kids, small children, and they're good for adults, but the demographic that's missing are the teenagers. There doesn't seem to be a lot for them, and a suggestion was made maybe even to have something like this at a high school where you could talk to some, you know, people in that demographic as to what they want for a town center. And it was mentioned that years ago there was a teen council set up, and it has to be good, like anything else, it has to be good leadership. Our table was pretty much against the idea of a parking garage. And then going down, we talked again about moving the pool, seeing that the current pool was redone in the last 10 years. It was mentioned that seniors have had issues using the pool in the summer because the camps are in session. And then another member at the table mentioned that they weren't comfortable with the village getting into an agreement with another public agency, i.e. the Board of Education, if we move the pool to the high school. So our consensus was to keep the pool where it is. And then the last page of my beautiful handwriting, Ken Adams Way. We got some clarification from Mr. Odell as far as how the retail shops would be done. Again, there were concerns with traffic both on Forest Hill Boulevard and South Shore, especially coming out of the Mayfair development. We believe traffic lights would be necessary if this town center idea comes to fruition. As far as restaurants and retail during non-season, it's a tough thing to get business during non-season. You know, so how would this play out when, you know, during the summer months? If the private sector wanted to pay for this, for the retail and for the restaurants, the consensus was we'd be okay with that. We just don't want taxpayer money going towards that. We also mentioned, you know, people who like to walk their dogs in the area. You know, we wanted to keep it safe for them. There was a concern about trespassers coming into the community, especially maybe when things aren't going on in the village center. For these walkways, we think resting areas with benches would be a good idea. It was also mentioned, a good example of this is Section 24, which is in the west part of the village, as an example of a good walkway. But we also realized that there may be a need for smaller walkways because some people just don't want to, you know, you take a long walk, you go all the way out, then you got to come all the way back in. So maybe different paths if that's doable. As far as the performing arts, we were against it. It was brought out that the Kravitz Center is underutilized. There are performing arts centers in Jupiter and in Boca. Not sure why a bigger one would work in Wellington, or even a small one for that matter. Someone said they wouldn't necessarily be against it, but they'd be very cautious given the past history with the land by the mall because there was thought of at one point putting a performing arts center there. And I think hopefully I covered everything.
Hello, my name's Carl Lavetri. I'm a Wellington resident since 1984. I live in Greenview Shores. Our table, we had a lot of really good discussion. We had some great help from Eric and Linda. Couldn't have done it without them. The first section, as far as the waterfront, we had pretty much of an agreement with most of the items. We had 2 no's. No, we had 1 no. The only no we had was for dining opportunities. Now, even though there was a no, they did agree to maybe an ice cream shop or a small little boutique type thing. They don't want music blowing out the back, going to 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. Maybe a place for coffee for breakfast or some small things like that, because few of the people that were in our group live in Mayfair. And they pretty much had an issue with most of it because of the concept of maybe there would be a lot of noise there with added facilities to that area. So the only thing, we had a no for the dining and added water features. It was a mix, yes or no. There was no real majority. Everything else, it was a majority as far as agreeing with the walkways, the covered seating. Basically, most of them want common areas where it's family, quiet areas, not so much about the business. But really, we only had 1 on the dining opportunities, and again, that was subject to whatever is really going to go there. Green space, we're all in the majority on everything. That was all positive. Everyone was in favor of everything in that particular section, with the exception of the parking structure. But then after we got through with most of the areas, some people said if you had to have a parking structure, we kind of found a place that would be good for a parking structure that would be right behind the communal center's parking lot, so it would adjoin there, where it really wouldn't infringe on anything if you did have to have a parking garage in the future, which I would think that in time that there's, my personal opinion is that you're going to need a parking garage of some sort, because if it gets used like Wellington wants it to get used, you're going to need parking. We're already short on parking. So, so the parking structure was the only no that we had as far as the green space. Everything was, the shaded areas. No, wait, we have one thing there. No, we had one other thing that was a no, and it was adding to the amphitheater for paid activities. They didn't want to expand the amphitheater. Okay. The next one was the waterfront features. The waterfront features were pretty mixed. There was we voted no on adding a splash pad to Scott's. It was a two-way street on the Scott's. There was no to the splash area, but it was yes to expanding Scott's because we think there's a need to expand Scott's and keep it where it is, but not splash. We don't want the splash to be added to Scott's. You could add the splash area to the pool area, but not as part of Scott's Place. They did want to improve Scott's if there was a need to improve it because of size and because it being overdone, overused. The pool, we are all in favor not to move the public pool, to leave the public pool where it is. And we're in agreement to add things to the public pool, but not relocate it. As far as creating a recreational splash area, and again, add it to the pool, yes, but not at this point, they didn't want it in a different area. They would want it as long as it was accompanied the pool area. Ken Adams. Ken Adams was a no, very strong no for any retail restaurants fronting Ken Adams. Again, no to add a parking structure. We already went over that before. Again, alter the amphitheater for paid per, that's a no. The walking trails, yes. Walking trails is a big thing that everybody wanted, to connect all the walkways, to connect the businesses, anything to connect and enhance the usability of the site for walkers, bikers, runners, that would in turn use some of the facilities in the small restaurants that they would agree to, again, but they don't really want a sit-down restaurant, but a small little places where runners, bikers, whatever could go to. And they would agree to, like I said, small shops, like the ice cream shops or cafes. But when you said the word restaurant, it threw up a big flag. So a restaurant would be no, and I said, well, it depends on the kind of restaurant, and then you had a big discussion about that. But as far as shops, ice cream shops, small cafe, again, as long as it is controlled and you don't have music to 10 or 12 o'clock at night. So that's how our table went. It was a very good group, and I got to thank Eric and Linda because they helped kept us on the straight and narrow there. So that's it.
We've all been here for a while, so I'll try to keep it as short and sweet as possible. My group mostly was concerned with accessibility and use of the existing structures, the existing facilities that are there now. The first and biggest priority that I think everyone had was increasing parking, including relocating some of it if necessary to allow for bigger events at the existing facilities that we have. When it comes to the waterfront, there was a consensus that none of us believe that there needs to be a restaurant on the water with the effects that it might have on neighbors across the lake, adjacent to it. Certainly not a facility that the village finances for someone else's use, even if we were the leaseholder or something like that. We were pretty good with boardwalks. In fact, we felt like some sort of promenade would be an added benefit to the area, would create more traffic through that part of the site. Let's see what else. The pool, at first everyone felt like the existing pool should remain as it is. However, after talking with Paul a little bit, understanding the costs of refurbishment, what replacement of a competition pool might be over the long run, we are all of a consensus that it would be okay for the competition pool to leave, go someplace else, redevelop the site or somewhere near the site as a family-friendly pool. We'd like to add splash pads. However, maybe not necessarily around the pool. As you get more into the green space options that were discussed, our biggest belief was that the existing facilities, the existing amenities that get used the most, Scott's Place, the amphitheater, these should be the focus of any development, any major change to the location. You could put splash pads around that area. We could expand Scott's Place to provide more access to what is already a very crowded playground. The amphitheater itself is sort of hemmed in on one side by Scott's Place and on the other side by a parking lot. We felt like expansion, pushing the amphitheater out a little bit more, because it's packed. On Thursday nights, if you go out there, it's full of people. On movie nights, in good weather, it's full of people. Can you make it bigger? Can you provide more space for more people? And that parking lot that sort of hems in the if you're standing at the amphitheater, the left side, that could be expanded for more green space so that you almost have a wrap of green space all the way around the perimeter of the amphitheater. An additional comment was that I felt like additional lighting was needed at the amphitheater. Not only at the amphitheater, but in the green spaces around the amphitheater. In the evenings, there was some concern over egress from the amphitheater in an emergency situation that we might need more lighting. So that's something to keep in mind. Going back to the lakes a little bit, the non-motorized boats, everyone was in agreement that that's okay. However, that should be a private endeavor. Whether the village makes an agreement with a vendor or whatever for kayaks and that sort of thing, that'd be great. Ken Adams Way, all of us were against any sort of new restaurant, promenade, anything like that. And the Performing Arts Center, we all felt like there was a need, but probably not on this site. Overall, we felt like the best course of action that our town can take here is to take the two most used facilities on the site, which are the amphitheater and Scotts Place area and the pool area, and make them as best as can be. Instead of trying to add every idea under the sun and take some sort of half measures in doing so, really concentrate and drill down on those uses and make them the best that they can be for our community. Thank you.
Sorry about that. For the last page, we were pretty much all in favor of removing the building and using the building for future use, keeping in mind that it would be a common area, family area, passive area, trying to protect the people at Mayfair. Also, there was a few people at Mayfair on our table, and they were asking for some kind of a good buffer, a wall between the center and that was the theme of most of the residents that were part of our group that were in Mayfair, is the concern for noise. So they asked for for a buffer, a wall between them to protect them, and we all agreed to remove the buildings and use the area for family and recreational and calm passive area for everyone's use. And I think that was it.
My name's Stephen Levin. I'll be the silent voice of table number 8. We sort of stuck to the agenda items, trying to move through them in some kind of an order, and we came up with some interesting comments. We had a great cross-section of older folks, retirees, some that live on the water, younger folks, and so we had a lot of diverse opinion at our table. We generally like the items for the waterfront, taking advantage of a boardwalk, taking advantage of benches, taking advantage of walking trails to shopping, possible water features, and then we got a little split on adult play, not really having a sense for what that was. The photographs of suggested ideas were helpful, but some of the folks couldn't see themselves on a swing. We saw dining as really 50-50, and some of the other items there, not so practical. The waterfront, the boating, the canoeing, the kayaking, the rowing, to definitely enhance that and take advantage of the waterfront, along with the raised boardwalk. As far as green spaces, we all like the idea of green spaces. We all like the idea of having more green space for recreation, entertainment, lounging, but not knowing specifically what the activities would be, it's a little difficult to green light something. And of course, if there's more green space, it would require more parking. There's a clear need at most of the activities for more parking as it sits, and if we enhance the attraction of the town center, a 2-story, 3-story, whatever story parking garage would probably be necessary. Shaded structures were attractive, and we liked the idea of splash pads, but not attached to Scott's Place. It actually came from the youngest member of our panel, that Scott's Place is play and recreation, and mixing wet with the playground didn't really make sense, to separate it somehow. We definitely want to keep the amphitheater as is, no gated entry, no fencing, no barricades, no fee. We liked free stuff at Table 8. As far as Ken Adams Way, we liked the idea of mixed use, and there were some great pictures offered as suggestions with restaurant or retail, cafe on a ground story, maybe with a 2nd or a 3rd story office space above, so that we wouldn't sacrifice the offices of the Lake Wellington Professional Center, to have some mixed use along that pathway. We were a good solid no on performing arts centers along Ken Adams Way. We didn't know what that would look like as far as an impact to the community. And then the back page sort of got jumbled together for us. There was some feeling that a banquet hall would be useful, that we could see a venue like the community center, but larger, to handle larger crowds. Again, not knowing what that would look like. Some of the seniors at our table felt like there wasn't enough senior activity, and we're sensitive to that as well. Altogether, I think we were split on some of the items. We were supportive of a lot of the waterfront things, and we had the most consensus on the waterfront activities. So, thanks very much.
Okay, so now can everybody hear me from this microphone? It appears to be working a lot better. At this point, I think all the tables have reported back, and we do again thank everybody for your comments this evening. Kind of a little look ahead as to where we're going to go from here is, one, as we said earlier, keep coming back to us with any comments, ideas, suggestions you may have on this project. It's a continuous process, and feel free to reach out to any of the staff members that you've worked with tonight. Feel free to reach out to the village manager, to me, to anybody else. Additionally, as far as coming attractions, we've got another public meeting for input and engagement scheduled for February 13th, and that's going to be at 6:30 at the community center. And the format of that meeting will be more of a traditional town hall type meeting, wherein we're going to start out with a little presentation, again, probably by me, with some background and what we've learned so far from the different meetings we've had. And then we're going to open into a comment session wherein everybody will be allowed to come up and provide their input related to either what I presented that evening or what you've seen previously, or again, just like this evening, no limitation, any input you might want to provide related to the town center project. Again, that's on February 13th. So again, with that, I think I want to thank all the staff that were here, all the residents that made it and stayed, all the residents that couldn't stay but at least came in for the early part. We appreciate your comments. And for those of you who have other friends, neighbors, relatives, etc., that have input but weren't able to make it this evening, please encourage them to reach out to staff and continue to provide the input. And we look forward to seeing you on February 13th. Thank you for coming out this evening.